Everyone's heard of the Rwandan genocide, the Holocaust, but up to 1.5 million deaths go unnoticed in the Armenian genocide. History is taught for us to learn from the past of our ancestors and be able to prevent future things from repeating themselves, as history tends to do. So, the amount of people uninformed on this event can lead it to happen again, but under different circumstances or to different people, but still generically be the same thing. So in this speech, I'm going to teach you about the Armenian genocide, the past of the Armenians, how the genocide was, how it started and how people let it happen, and what it actually happened. So first, when the Ottoman Empire was formed, they had land around where current Turkey is. And this is where most of the Armenians resided. In the Ottoman government, for the most part, the Armenians were Christians, so the Ottoman Empire was tolerant of them, didn't really mess with them a lot, but the Turkish people and the Kurdish people hated them. They would go to their villages, they would rape, pillage, destroy them, kill them, enslave them, and the government would do nothing about it. This went on for a while until Britain, France, and Russia pressured the Ottoman Empire to treat the Armenian subjects better and to protect them, and to make sure that their Christian subjects were being protected under the law of the land. The Ottoman Empire completely ignored this, and Abdul Hamid II, in retaliation to this, he said that the Armenians were over-exaggerating their problems, and they were making it seem way too big than it was, and they took up so little of the population that they actually weren't worth all these reforms that were trying to happen. So this led to the Hamadan massacre, where about 300 Armenians were killed. Scholars and community leaders were killed. This was not the start of the genocide, but this was the start of a big mistreatment. This continued on. The Abdul Hamid II did not treat the Armenian subjects well and pressured them and just treated them terribly, beat them, killed them, enslaved them. In July 1908, the part of the Ottoman Empire's military staged a coup d'etat, which took out the Sultan from power and took out the Islamic law and instituted a constitutional monarchy for the land, which promised minorities, the Armenians being part of this minority, better rights, protection under the law, and they would stop being treated as second-class citizens. This lasted for half a year. Early July 1909, a counter-coup was started, which restored the Sultan back to power and brought back the Islamic law, even harsher this time because it was taken out of power, and they viewed it as Allah saying that they were not strong enough in their subjects, they didn't teach Islam enough, and that was his punishment, was kicking them out of power. So now that they're back into power, they were even harsher. The Armenians supported the constitutional monarchy because it granted them rights, gave them protection under the law. So of course, they're going to prefer that. The Sultan knew this, and as punishment, he targeted the Armenians, specifically now, instead of just being a group of minorities. So now the government is effectively targeting this group of people, persecuting them, and just increasing the amount of damage that was being done. So this went on until the Balkan Wars. The Balkan Wars were fought against the European subjects, against the Ottomans, mainly religious war, but wasn't technically labeled a religious war. The Ottomans lost this, which made them lose up to 95% of their European territory. So now all these Muslims in this territory have to flee back to the homeland, or just other places in the Ottoman Empire because they didn't want to be ruled by Christian leaders. This made a lot of people flee to present-day Turkey, which is where all the Armenians resided. The Armenians were Christians. So now they had all these new people, these new Muslim refugees, that moved there and were trying to keep their traditions the same, while the Armenians had a completely different culture because of their religion. So the persecution got even worse until World War I, where the Ottomans tried to attack Russia early on in World War I, 1915. and the Armenians assisted the Russians, which caused the Ottoman Empire to lose. The Sultan, when the Sultan found out about this, he was outraged and started feeding the people propaganda and blaming the Armenians for all of the Ottoman Empire's problems. And this went on until the genocide started, April 24th, 1915. 250 Armenian intellectuals and community leaders were killed on Red Sunday. So that is the start of the genocide, which 1.5 million people were killed. The Ottoman Empire took all able-bodied men out of the military and put them into work camps until they were worked to death. And they took women, children, the elderly, they sent them to the Syrian desert on a death march all the way to they would end up dying either there, on the trip over there, or in concentration camps. The Europeans knew about this. It wasn't like the Holocaust, how it was covered up, and we found out about it only when we discovered the concentration camps. We were fully aware of this, but chose to ignore it at the time. And overall, it was a very, just not hidden event. Everyone knew about it, but everyone just kind of ignored its existence. So, after the math, World War I ends, the Ottoman Empire collapses, and the persecution of the Armenians stopped. But they were never given any reparations for all the territory they lost or all their hardships. They just were released from the concentration camps and left to fend for themselves. So that's the Armenian genocide. And our reaction to this, pretty terrible. Only 28 countries actually recognize this as an actual genocide. The Turkish government, it's against the law to try to raise awareness against it, and you actually can be imprisoned for it. The French government, when they passed a law or passed a bill recognizing the Armenian genocide as an actual genocide, the Turkish government completely cut off ties militarily and refused to let them fly over their airspace. And in 2007, the United States had a bill that was going to pass to raise awareness for the genocide and to recognize it. But during the Afghanistan and Iraq wars, we flew over Turkey. Over 90% of our planes flew through Turkey or had something to do with there. So we knew that if we passed that bill, we'd be cut off ties. We'd no longer be able to fly through there. So for military reasons, President Bush pressured the Congress to deny the bill, to get it pulled, not denied, but just pulled out of it. And that happened. We have yet to go back to it. Again, only 28 countries recognize this as an actual genocide, and not many people know about it. And it's actually recognized as a lot of scholars recognize it as the first genocide because it's the first systematic killing of a group of individuals by a government. But still, people do not recognize this and completely ignore it. And if you completely ignore parts of history, they're bound to repeat themselves with a different group of people. And especially with this, it shows that you should not persecute a group of minorities for their different beliefs. And although at the time it sounds like what you're doing is right, or you can blame all your problems on them, this group of minorities, because they don't have enough power to stand up for themselves, you should think of the other side and think of that they're actually people, and to look back on history and how we've had these things happen, and things change, and mindsets change, and we realize that people are people. Just because they have different beliefs doesn't mean that they're different. And that's why the Armenian genocide should be considered a genocide, and people should be informed of it. That's all.